For centuries, the world has viewed Africa through a lens of pity and despair, a continent of poverty, disease, conflict, and corruption, a place that has been exploited, colonized, and marginalized by the great powers of the world. The narrative of Africa is a narrative of victimhood, a story of a continent that has been left behind, a place that is perpetually dependent on foreign aid, foreign investment, and foreign charity. The world has been told that Africa's future is bleak, that the continent is doomed to remain poor and powerless, and that its only hope lies in the benevolence of the wealthy nations of the world. But this narrative is a lie, a deliberate and calculated deception that is designed to obscure the truth about Africa's extraordinary potential. Africa is not a poor continent. It is a rich continent, a continent that is blessed with an abundance of natural resources, a continent that is home to the world's largest reserves of cobalt, platinum, gold, diamonds, and rare earth minerals, a continent that holds the keys to the future of global energy, technology, and manufacturing. Africa is not a weak continent. It is a powerful continent, a continent that is home to the world's youngest and fastest growing population, a continent that is rapidly urbanizing and modernizing, a continent that is emerging as a new center of global economic, political, and cultural power. Africa is not a hopeless continent. It is a continent of immense potential, a continent that is on the verge of historic transformation that could reshape the global order. The world is only beginning to wake up to the reality of Africa's potential. The rise of China, the resurgence of India, and the shifting balance of global power have created new opportunity for Africa as the great powers compete for influence and resources on the continent. The African Union, the African Continental Free Trade Area, and the growing political and economic integration of the continent are creating a new sense of unity and purpose. The young and dynamic populations of Africa are driving a wave of innovation, entrepreneurship, and cultural creativity that is transforming the continent from within. Africa is rising, and the world is not ready for it. To understand why Africa could become the next superpower, we must first travel back in time to an era when Africa was not a victim of history, but creator of it, a continent that was home to some of the world's oldest and most advanced civilizations. The ancient world was a world in which Africa was a center of power, a place of great kingdoms, empires, and cities that rivaled anything that existed in Europe or Asia. The Egyptians, the Nubians, the Aksumites, the Ghana, Mali, and Songhai empires, the Great Zimbabwe, and the Swahili city-states were all powerful and sophisticated civilizations that shaped the course of history. The medieval world was a world in which Africa was a major player, a continent that was connected to the global economy through the trans-Saharan trade routes, the Indian Ocean Trade Network, and the Atlantic slave trade. The kingdoms and empires of Africa were major producers of gold, ivory, salt, and other valuable goods, and they were major consumers of goods from Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. The African continent was a center of commerce, culture, and innovation, and its influence was felt far beyond its borders. The modern era was a time of tragedy for Africa, a time when the continent was carved up by the European powers, a time when its resources were plundered, its people were enslaved, and its cultures were destroyed. The Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885 formalized the colonization of Africa, and the European powers proceeded to exploit the continent for their own benefit. The colonial era was a time of immense suffering and exploitation, a time when Africa was stripped of its wealth, its dignity, and its freedom. The post-colonial era was a time of struggle and hope, a time when the newly independent nations of Africa sought to build a new future, a time when the continent was divided, unstable, and weak. The Cold War, the proxy wars, the civil wars, and the economic crises of the post-colonial era all contributed to a narrative of African weakness and failure. But the post-colonial era was also a time of resistance, resilience, and renewal, a time when the seeds of Africa's future transformation were being sown. The post-colonial era set the stage for the rise of Africa as a new global power, and the world is only beginning to understand the full implications. The hidden power of Africa lies in its extraordinary resources, its young and dynamic population, its rapidly growing economies, and its emerging political and economic integration. Africa is not a poor continent. It is a rich continent, and its wealth is the key to its future power. The first hidden layer is the natural resources. Africa is home to the world's largest reserves of cobalt, platinum, gold, diamonds, and rare earth minerals, resources that are essential to the global economy and the future of technology, energy, and manufacturing. The Democratic Republic of the Congo is the world's largest producer of cobalt, a key component of electric vehicle batteries. South Africa is the world's largest producer of platinum, a key component of catalytic converters. Ghana is a major producer of gold, a key store of value. Africa's natural resources are the foundation of its future power. The second hidden layer is the human resources. Africa is home to the world's youngest and fastest growing population, with more than 60% of the continent's population under the age of 25. The young people of Africa are educated, ambitious, and connected, and they are driving a wave of innovation, entrepreneurship, and cultural creativity that is transforming the continent. The human resources of Africa are the engine of its future growth. The third hidden layer is the economic growth. Africa is one of the fastest growing economic regions in the world, with an average annual GDP growth rate of more than 4%. The African Continental Free Trade Area, which came into effect in 2021, is the largest free trade area in the world, covering a market of more than 1.2 billion people. The economic growth of Africa is creating new opportunities for investment, trade, and development. The fourth hidden layer is the political and economic integration. The African Union is working to create a more integrated and unified continent with a single market, a single currency, and a common security architecture. The political and economic integration of Africa is creating a new sense of unity and purpose, and it is laying the foundation for Africa's emergence as a global power. The rise of Africa as a new global power will have profound implications for the world, affecting global trade, global security, and the global balance of power. The world is only beginning to understand the full implications of Africa's rise, and it is not yet prepared for the transformation that is underway. The first ripple is a shift in global trade. Africa is becoming a major player in global trade, with its exports of natural resources, agricultural products, and manufactured goods growing rapidly. The African Continental Free Trade Area is creating a single market that will be larger than the European Union, and it will transform the global trade landscape. The shift in global trade will benefit Africa and its trading partners, but will also create new competition and new challenges. The second ripple is a shift in global security. Africa is becoming a more stable and secure continent, with the African Union working to resolve conflicts, build peace, and promote security. The shift in global security will benefit the world, as Africa becomes a source of stability rather than a source of instability. But it will also create new challenges as the great powers compete for influence on the continent. The third ripple is a shift in the global balance of power. Africa is becoming a new center of global power, a continent that is increasingly able to shape the global agenda and to influence the decisions of the great powers. The shift in the global balance of power will benefit Africa and the world as a more multipolar world order emerges, but it will also create new tensions and new conflicts as the great powers adjust to the new reality. The fourth ripple is the shift in global culture. Africa is becoming a new center of global culture, with its music, art, fashion, and film shaping the cultural landscape of the world. The shift in global culture will benefit the world, as it creates a more diverse and vibrant global culture, but it will also create new challenges as the world adapts to the new cultural realities. The future of Africa is a future of uncertainty, a future that is shaped by the choices that the continent makes today. Two paths lie ahead, two completely different destinies. In the first path, Africa realizes its full potential, leveraging its resources, its people, and its institutions to become a global superpower. The continent becomes a source of prosperity, stability, and innovation, a model for the rest of the world. In the second path, Africa fails to realize its potential, trapped by the legacies of colonialism, the challenges of governance, the threats of conflict, and the risks of environmental degradation. The continent remains a source of poverty, instability, and dependency, a cautionary tale for the rest of the world. The question is not whether Africa can become the next superpower. The question is whether it has the will to do so. The map never lies, but the people draw it always have a reason. We just saw why Africa could become the next superpower. But there is one nation that is quietly leading the continent's transformation. That is the next journey. Which future do you believe? Comment Future 1 or Future 2, and subscribe to Atlas Beyond so you never miss the next journey.